Phase 1 sets up the characters. So where do you go from here? Well, you go back to the one guy that you know will be a success. Iron Man 3 gets a really bad rap. I like Iron Man 3. Oh, the Mandarin twist. It's not like the comics. Forget your fucking comics.
Language.
It's already happened. If you want the Mandarin story from the comics, read it. You know how it goes. In my opinion, a comic is the source. It is source material. You just take what you want and make a new story. If you just got what came in the comics, how it happened, how boring would that be? People that complain about a lack of comic accuracy have some genuine, valid points from time to time. But in moments like this, in this movie, it's invalid. It's a setup. It's a subversion that doesn't ruin the story. Yes, the eventual reveal of Guy Pearce, I am the Mandarin, is weak, and he is a weak villain. But the rest of the movie is very unique, and by the end of it, you've watched another Iron Man movie with a lot of character development. And by the end of this movie, back then, people were questioning if Robert Downey Jr. was going to come back as Iron Man, because the ending really closes off this story for him. And I can't believe this movie is 10 years old. It's been 10 years since we had an Iron Man movie. That's wild. Thor: The Dark World. Again, like Iron Man 3. This movie gets a really bad rap. I've never not liked this movie. I understand the criticisms. It's boring. Thor's boring. The villain's boring. I don't think the villain is that bad. He's got a cool look. He has a motivation that's kind of understandable. I mean, it's low tier, but it's not terrible. I think the action's not bad, the music's not bad, there's good emotional moments with Loki and Thor's mother. There's a lot to like in Thor 2 in my opinion. And when you look back now, I bet you miss this kind of filmmaking. It sets up the ether, which becomes an infinity stone, which always confused me why it's a liquid cloud. Whatever. I don't hate Thor 2. And it's far from the worst MCU movie in my opinion. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This movie rocks. This movie kicks ass. The Russos and their writing duo, the four of them, pulled off the best movies in the MCU. It's a funny thing how inside the MCU system, these guys pulled off miracles. Outside of it, they've had some struggles. It really goes to show there is a link between the business side of movie making and the artistic side. They need each other. We can't just say give writers and directors freedom, because then you get Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is over 4 fucking hours long and full of so much shit, it's bullshit. Anyway, ooh, look at my aspect ratio, I'm Zack Snyder. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is great. The action is probably the best in the series, because it still feels real, feels on the ground, you know? This is before the MCU went cosmic. We realize S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infected by Hydra since the end of World War II. We learn a bit more about Captain America. We learn more about Nick Fury. We learn more about the Falcon, Black Widow, and then you go to Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I remember the trailers and everything for this. I was never excited for this movie. You gotta remember, there was a time before cosmic space movies were a mainstay in the modern blockbuster. Before this, there was an emphasis on grounding the MCU and superhero films in general in reality. This is around the era, just coming off The Dark Knight Rises, we're in Snyder's DC era. There's an emphasis to ground everything. And personally, I think that works better than where we are now. Guardians introduces this cosmic side of the MCU, but it still feels grounded in its own heightened reality, which is where we've gone astray now. I love the first Guardians. It's not my favorite one. You like everybody in the team. The ending, when they all hold hands, holding the Infinity Stone, the Power Stone is introduced in this movie too. That's a really powerful scene and one of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU. The music is great, Tyler Bates, the soundtrack, James Gunn of course, all good stuff here. Avengers: Age of Ultron, I think this movie is pretty boring. Not a bad movie, but boring and suffered from misleading marketing. Some of these trailers were the most epic trailers I've ever seen in my goddamn life.
There are no strings on me.
Ultron looked like the biggest badass we were ever going to see. The fight between Hulk and Iron Man looked like it was going to be the greatest thing ever seen. And it just wasn't. It's just a boring movie. I can remember around this time of the Avengers 2, before it came out, there were theories about a World War Hulk movie, about a Civil War movie potentially. There were whispers about that, nothing confirmed. I always had the theory that Age of Ultron would let Ultron win in the second act, but be killed. He would come in, beat the Avengers, and tear them apart. Because that was a big line in the trailer. Tear them apart, and then be killed. Third act would turn into the Avengers sort of fighting each other, and the climax of the movie would be Hulk versus Iron Man. The only way Iron Man could beat the Hulk was sending him off planet. That was my theory. I wish we got that. Because then, by the end of Age of Ultron, you've got Ultron winning, becoming a great villain, you've set up Civil War, and you've set up what became Thor Ragnarok. And then there was Ant-Man, which ended phase 2. It's a good fun little movie. Meant to be directed by Edgar Wright. He left because studio systems suffocate directors like him. Paul Rudd is a stroke of genius. Great Ant-Man. Michael Douglas. It's all good here. There's nothing spectacular about Ant-Man. Some of the special effects and the sequences are really cool. It is a funny concept. The whole thing with Thomas the Tank Engine and that joke, the cutaways to what's really happening is so tiny, is clever. And I don't think that will ever really get old because it is so inherently silly. This is when Marvel was so good at what they were doing. They could introduce any character, give them a relatable story, and you would love them and accept them by the end of the movie, no matter how stupid their powers, whatever seemed. So what worked about phase 2? Phase 2 successfully brought in the cosmic side of the MCU and introduced other smaller peripheral characters that would eventually become bigger in their own right. Phase 2 was also able to set up more Infinity Stones, really starting to build the hype that would eventually come with Thanos in Infinity War. Marvel was good here, taking their time, movie by movie, introducing all these key aspects, setting up for the future. What didn't work is that phase 2 can be looked back as forgettable, safe. This is still in that weird era where the comic book films were afraid to truly embrace the silliness of comics and were still trying to hold on to the Dark Knight vibe of grounding everything. And like phase 1, phase 2 suffered from bad villains. And then that transitioned you into phase 3.